Welcome to Bring Back the Pollinators, everyone. This event is being recorded. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel in 1 to 2 weeks. This event is part of Whidbey Reads, an annual community reading event. Whidbey Reads is funded through generous donations from the Whidbey Community Foundation, the Clinton, Langley, Freeland, Coopville, and Oak Harbor Friends of the Library groups, and is supported by the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation. Our 2023 selection is Music of the Bees by Eileen Garvin. Contact your local community library to request a copy. Sometimes they have them at the library, but they've been going like hotcakes. So make sure you get on the hold list. All the feedback I've gotten from the book has been positive. Everybody is really liking the book, so I hope you enjoy it too. Visit our website for bonus resources and information about additional Whidbey Reads programs. Your mics are muted. Use our chat to ask questions at any time during the program. Questions will be answered following the formal presentation, and we will use chat on our end to share links to relevant resources. And now introducing Linda Zielinski. Xerces Society Ambassador Linda Zielinski has taught classes in backyard chicken raising in Skagit County, helped create workshops for sustainable living with Transition Fidalgo and Friends, including creating yard tours for folks to learn about raising food in their small city yards. She's hosted yard tours for the Skagit Conservation District and taught recreational ukulele and led uke jams at the Anacortes Senior Center. Linda is a retired Skagit County Master Gardener and Skagit County Master Composter Recycler, and has worked with Fidalgo Backyard Wildlife Habitat Committee to get Anacortes certified with the National Wildlife Federation. A former sailor, Linda helped build the sailboat she lived on for 15 years. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm happy to be here. And thanks to Snow Isle Library for hosting this presentation today. If you have questions, add them to chat and I will answer as many as we have time for at the end of the PowerPoint. If your question refers to a slide, please add the slide number to your chat. Find the number in the upper left-hand corner of each slide. Well, let's get started. What is the work of pollinators? What can we do, both as individuals and as members of a community, to ensure their habitat and food requirements? What are the threats that face these beneficial insects? I'm Linda Zielinski, one of over 75 volunteer ambassadors for the Xerces Society, and one of 3 outreach volunteers in Washington State. I'm a gardener in Anacortes who has noticed fewer bees and other insects in my garden. In January of 2022, I was preparing a presentation for my garden club on native bees. The more I learned, the more energized I became with improving bee habitat in my small yard. Much of my research for that presentation was sourced from the Xerces Society. A few months later, the Society accepted me as a volunteer, a Xerces ambassador. Our training is ongoing and science-based. Our job is to reach out to the public and augment Xerces educational programs. The Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation has for over half a century committed to finding solutions to environmental challenges facing pollinators and other invertebrate animals. Xerces is an international non-profit organization named after the Xerces blue butterfly pictured here. Last seen in 1943 in its dunes habitat in the San Francisco Bay Area. Human activity, land development, destroyed that habitat. Robert Michael Pyle, lepidopterist and conservation biologist, was moved to create a group named after
Are we still on the first
Actually,
slide?
my last words were, next slide, please. So this
Okay,
one, yeah,
perfect.
this is the right one. Xerces promotes protection and conservation of invertebrates and their habitats through scientific research, education, advocacy, and policy development. The Society has created research programs, written books, and other publications, and spawned many educational programs reaching out to farmers, teachers, and schools, individuals, and environmental groups, and works in conjunction with federal, state, and local government agencies. It works with hundreds of agriculturists and land managers and has developed over 50,000 acres of bee and butterfly habitat. There are Why care about pollinators? One answer, do you eat? And next slide, please. Pollinator invertebrates, animals without backbones, provide you with one of every 3 mouthfuls of food you eat. Additionally, pollinating and other insects are a crucial part of the food chain for birds. 96% of bird parents feed their babies high-protein insects or insect larvae. Omnivores, for example, bears, rely heavily on eating insects or berry-laden shrubs whose berries exist only because the shrub has been pollinated by bees. The grace and beauty of observing the interactions of bees, butterflies, and other insects with flowering plants in our gardens, parks, and meadows is something not to be taken for granted. These insects give such joy and peace of mind to everyone. Next slide, please. All these insects, beetles, butterflies, moths, bees, wasps, and flies can act as pollinators. Next slide, please. Of the pollinating insects, except for a few wasp species, only bees deliberately gather pollen to bring back to their nests as food for their offspring. In a single foraging trip, bees may visit hundreds of flowers to carry pollen back to the nest. For example, a squash blossom needs 12 to 24 visits to become fully pollinated and create a perfect fruit. Butterflies, moths, wasps, flies, and beetles are in it for nectar only, while causing some incidental transfer of pollen. Bees will repeatedly visit only one plant species on any given foraging trip, so that the pollen they are leaving behind likely matches the needs of the flower visited. Other insects are more sporadic, skipping from one flower type to another. Bees forage, return to their nest, and don't travel to other areas, unlike butterflies. Bees are what is known as central place foragers. Not so with butterflies, moths, and flies. Those insects deposit eggs in relatively large areas. If the place where they are used to foraging is disturbed, bees tend not to search out better places. Next slide, please. And here's some bee diversity for you. In the United States and Canada, we have 3,600 species of bees. In Washington State, about 600. In a city the size of Seattle, more or less 100. And in your garden, 20 to 30 species of bees. Next slide, please. Colony-forming bumblebees and honeybees will sting in defense of a disturbed nest. Other native bees are gentle, solitary, and don't have a colony to protect, as each bee has only her own separate nest. Next slide. Bees come in a range of colors, from black to metallic green or blue, with markings of red, orange, white, black, brown, and yellow. In the next few slides, you will see the beauty of just a few of our local native bees. Go to the next slide there, Catherine. Here's your western bumblebee. And the next slide, the longhorned bee, which some find to be their favorite bee. They just look at it and go, oh yeah, that's my favorite bee. Next slide, please. The fuzzy-legged leafcutter bee. Well, for name, I like this one the best. Next slide. Except for the bumblebee, our native bees are solitary, meaning that each female bee creates her own nest and is in sole charge of creating food and safe shelter for her offspring. She mates only once, then finds a good nesting site and provisions it with nectar and pollen in the form of bee bread. Mama bee may lay 20 or 30 eggs in her short lifetime. Here you see a typical solitary bee life cycle. These bees live about a year, but only 1 month as an adult. As offspring in the nest, each starts inside the egg, which Mama bee has laid on top of a loaf of the bee bread and then sealed off into its own chamber. The egg takes 1 to 3 weeks to hatch into a larva. The larva, a soft-bodied grub-like being, eats the bee bread and grows for 6 to 8 weeks. Then it wraps itself in a protective cocoon and goes through its pupa stage, which lasts for 8 or 9 months. Meanwhile, the adult bees have died, and the new bees will hatch in early spring to repeat this solitary bee cycle. And I have to say that I've just started keeping mason bees, and I got a few cocoons, and they have hatched. They finally hatched about 3 days ago. I don't know where the bees are, but they're out of their little protective cell there. Next slide, please. The bumblebee, a social bee, has a different life cycle than the solitary bee. After hibernating 6 to 9 months through winter, each new queen bumblebee begins a new social colony that will last less than 1 year. She'll search for a place underground in old mouse nests or in rock pile crevices. Forming wax brood cells from glands in her abdomen, she'll provision each with nectar and pollen and then lay an egg in each brood cell. In 4 days, a larva will emerge from the egg and eat the nectar and pollen. In 14 days, the larva creates a cocoon around itself, and in another 14 days, it has developed into an adult, biting its way out of the cocoon. New adults are worker bees who take over food foraging and nest tending. The queen continues laying eggs through the summer, creating a colony of 30 to 400 bees. By summer's end, she'll lay only unfertilized eggs, resulting in male bees who will breed with the final brood of females, who will then hibernate through winter and form new colonies the following spring. The old queen dies, as do the males. Next slide, please. 70% of native bees nest underground. Each female bee digs into the soil and creates brood cells below the soil. Next slide, please. 30% of native bees are tunnel nesters in dead trees and branches, hollow stems and canes. Next slide. Cavity nesting carpenter and mason bees, hollow reeds, raspberry canes, dried stems of spent flowers, all are potential nests for many bees. That's why I hope you haven't cleaned up your garden very much yet. Wait until May if you haven't cleaned it up, and next year, remember that. Those hollow reeds and old autumn joy stems are likely going to be used by one of the cavity nesting bees. Next slide, please. Native bees need nest materials. Some species collect leaf pieces, resin, soil, clay, animal fur, fibers, house insulation, etc., for constructing nest cells. Some use old bird nests or mouse nests. And you can see this little leaf cutter bee. She's got sort of an oval shaped leaf shape that she's cut out. That will be part of the side of her little brood cell. She'll get a few more of that oval shape to line the around the edge of her brood cell. She'll put her nectar and pollen bee bread in there, lay her egg, and then she'll go back out there and cut a circle from a leaf and put it on top of her brood cell and go on to the next chamber. So if you've seen some circles in leaves, you know that you've got leaf cutter bees, and pay attention, look for those oval shaped ones, oval shaped leaves too. I didn't know they did ovals also. Next slide, please.
Linda, before we go on, we have a question as to what
Uh-huh.
exactly is bee bread? Can you explain that a little bit more?
A little bit. It's a mixture of nectar and pollen. So the the queen bee is going to go after pollen, and she'll get a little nectar too on her visit when she's foraging. And then I don't know how she mixes it, but somehow she mixes the two together and forms what we can call a loaf of bee bread, kind of anthropomorphic.
And that's their food. That's what the larva eats before they pupate. Yes.
That's right. That's
Okay.
their food. That's the groceries.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Next slide. Yeah. Bumblebees nest in existing cavities such as old rodent holes. So leave some areas untidy and overgrown. These areas are winter shelter for butterfly and moth chrysalids and for next spring's queen bumblebees. Next slide. And leave those leaves in the fall. You can sweep them off your sidewalk, but don't sweep them off away from your yard. They're not litter. They're food and shelter for butterflies, beetles, and more. Please leave the leaves this fall. Next slide. Bees need nest sites of snags, shrubs with hollow stems, bare ground, and very important, of course, to be pesticide free. Next slide. This photo shows how small an area of bare ground can be to be used by a ground nesting bee. This area that we're looking at in the picture is about 8 or 10 inches wide between the rock and the edge of the driveway you see at the bottom of the photo. And bees have created holes under that rock to nest. And you see some of the little pieces of gravelly, small soil pieces that they've dragged out. They can really dig to create those little cells down under the ground for themselves. Next slide. Bees need flowers for food, pollen, and that gives them their protein. And they need flowers for drink, nectar, which is their sort of sugar source, their energy source. And I've never thought about bee tongues, but that's how they get all that stuff out of there. And you can see on the left the picture of that looks almost like another leg coming out of the bee's mouth, and that's his tongue. Some bees have shorter tongues, others have longer tongues. And so that helps them decide what kind of flower they can visit. Some flowers aren't going to be accessible to the bees that have short tongues and so forth. Okay, next slide, please. So bring back the pollinators. How can you do that? By choosing a diversity of plants that will grow throughout the bee season, which is here around late February till late September in the Pacific Northwest. Plant in clumps of one species rather than scattering solitary plants throughout the garden. Non-native and hybrid flowers don't have the long history of a symbiotic relationship that our native plants and bees have developed. Many hybrids have little or no nectar or pollen, or the nectar and pollen they have isn't usable to the bees or is very low quality, sort of like junk food. Some of the hybrid flowers are sort of like junk food for bees. And these hybrids have been bred to appeal to gardeners, but have left the needs of bees in the dust. Their complicated flower shapes and double petals make bee entrance almost impossible. They may be colors that bees don't recognize, like red, which to a bee looks green or greenish. They may lack the ultraviolet markings that guide a bee into the nectar and pollen zone of flowers in the bee usable plants. So gardeners, go for single flowers. Bees use blue, yellow, white, purplish, and ultraviolet flowers that we can't see, but they can, as they can recognize these colors. So observe your plants. When the bees emerge, which ones do the bees use? Next slide, please. Now, this particular slide, native plants for our area, if you can, this is a very garden useful list. If you can
Yeah.
take a photo of this, I'm going to leave this one here for a bit while I read about it. I have all of these in my yard. I would like you to add one I forgot to put in there, Indian plum, which some of you know as oso berry, O-S-O berry, Indian plum or oso berry. And the others on the list, Oregon grape, willow, maple, big leaf maple, snowberry, elderberry, ocean spray, various wild roses, woodland strawberries, sea thrift, mock orange, Douglas asters, columbine, California poppies, which I always thought they were only in California. Boy, am I wrong. Camas and yarrow. Next slide, please. The next time you amble through your neighborhood, envision yourself as a mason bee or some other cavity nesting bee. Your foraging space is limited to about 100 to 300 feet because you are a smaller bee. And that isn't bad distance. You are often loaded with pollen, and that can weigh a gal down. Perhaps you follow a counterclockwise path, like the pink trail on the lower left, going toward where it says 1, the fruit trees, if the apple trees are in bloom, and then over to where it says 2, that vegetable garden, where there might be snow pea flowers or scarlet runner bean flowers. Then you head over to that number 6, a planted street median, yarrows or rock rose may be there. You love it when, go back to over to the yellow 3, those pollinator useful shrubs are in flower. Maybe red flowering currant or witch hazel or Oregon grape or sarcococa. Then over there in the shade, number 4, perhaps there are hellebores or cyclamen, violets. It's such a nectar and pollen rich area that you found to create your nest. Lots of good, caring humans here creating the habitat you need so they can keep their neighborhood bees involved in a healthy and balanced biodiversity. Or maybe instead, you are envisioning yourself as a bumblebee, one of the ground nesters. Now you have a much bigger range. Instead of less than 300 feet like that mason bee, you might fly a third to a half a mile. And so you're going to follow that green path on the upper right, visiting counterclockwise. Number 1, where it says blooming fruit trees. And then there's a number 5, which has something called a prairie pocket, which is, I think, more of a Texas or Eastern Washington thing, maybe, including prairie grasses and wildflowers. Then on to where the 3 is, flowering shrubs, and wow, number 7, a bee lawn. This person turned their turf lawn into a pollinator meadow after learning that green lawns are biological deserts for insects. Their bee meadow has colorful flowers with nectar and pollen for your use, and they have kindly chosen to use no pesticides, which would kill you and other insects. You continue over to the 3 with more flowering shrubs. Is that lavender? And then to 8, which is a rain garden. Besides filtering rainwater as it percolates into the ground, these rain gardens are often planted with native plants and wildflowers. And then over to that number 9, which is a curb planting, also known as a health strip, designed for pollinators instead of being left as hardpan and weeds. How a pollinator pathway would beautify our communities if each neighbor planted just their own curb. Then back to 1, more fruit trees, and 2, vegetable gardens. When you're a bumblebee, you work hard, just like humans, to get groceries to feed her kids. Next slide, please. In the last decades, scientists have seen declines in abundance of insect pollination populations, extinction of many species, and increased danger of extinction of others. These declines have been most conspicuous where humans are the most active. What are some of the threats to pollinators and other insects? The Xerces blue butterfly was a victim of habitat loss, both of territory and forage plants. Butterflies, bees, and other insects face extinction wherever deforestation, land development for building or agriculture, or whatever reason, replaces habitat. Next slide, please. Modern landscaping practices strip habitat from our yards, which become biological deserts for native bees who require a diverse habitat for survival. Could you go to the next slide, please? There we go. Turfgrass is a monoculture and useless to pollinators. A yard with areas of untidiness and diversity of plantings of trees, shrubs, and flowers, on the other hand, is the very thing pollinators need for survival. When mulch, bark and compost, for example, is thoughtfully applied to your garden, it is a fantastic soil builder and retainer of soil moisture. But if every square inch is thickly covered, the ground nesting bees, and remember there's 70% of our native bees, will lack bare areas of ground, or at least very thin mulch or leaf cover to dig and form nests. Next slide, please, number 30. Another threat is pesticides. The pesticides we are most concerned about for pollinators are insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides. It is practically impossible, even when one follows the instructions on the pesticide labels, to keep pollinators from harm. Next slide, please. Pesticides are too often used not only in agriculture, but for cosmetic reasons in manicured parks, private gardens, and lawns. Combined with hardscaping in parks and gardens, pesticides are easily washed off sidewalks into the storm drains and waterways. Ask your nursery if pesticides were used on the plants that you want to buy. A reputable nursery will have that information. Next slide. Create and advocate for pollinator habitat. To review, bees need secure nest sites, flowers for foraging, and a pesticide-free environment. Next slide. Online at xerces.org, Xerces has downloadable booklets, including the X-Kids program, which has an activity booklet for 8 to 11-year-old children. It's quite nice. I leafed through it, and I'll be able to have a table event at this year's Master Gardener Plant Sale at the Skagit Valley Fairgrounds And if you are out there buying plants for yourself, please stop by in the educational section, and I'll have some of these activity booklets there and other activities for children. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And you can download from xerces.org guides and pamphlets and view videos to help you learn more about helping pollinators thrive. Be one of many people who are saving pollinators 1 yard at a time. Next slide, please. And donations are welcome at xerces.org/donate. Next slide. Thanks. And I believe my email is available to you on chat. If you would like a speaker or a tabling presentation for your group, or you can contact the Xerces Society directly, and they will find a speaker for you. And I will take questions. Thank you.
Okay, so let me go ahead and stop the share. And I can come back on. Hello. So we
Hello.
just have a few questions so far.
Okay.
It says, does the use of a pest control service harm bees? So you know how people pay to have a service come out, and usually they set some traps, and it depends on, maybe you can answer that
Yeah.
a little better than I
If
can.
if they're setting the traps or removing if it's a hive they're removing, I believe they're going to well, I'm hoping many of them remove them to a better place that isn't in your way. But if they're putting out pesticides, it will harm every insect, every insect. There's just no getting around it. It's a dilemma. My final answer.
Mhm. Next is, does your soil need to be soft for bees to make nests there?
Different bees can do different magic with different soils, but generally it's nicer to have sort of a crumbly, slightly sandy, even broken up clay though. So yeah, if the hard pan isn't going to see a lot of nesting bees, but uh, if you have a bare area that has some shrubs above it, but not right down on the soil, that will keep the soil looser than the stuff that's out completely out where foot traffic can harden it. So yes, it could
Okay,
be it, of course, yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is, does the native plant list include Salal? I don't know if I saw it on there.
It should have.
Okay,
And I don't think it was on there. And
okay,
yes, it should have.
yeah,
Thank you, person.
for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. And then what local nurseries do you recommend for buying some of these native plants and shrubs and things? That's one of the
Each
questions.
nursery, okay. Each nursery has some native plants in it. Christensen's has some, Ace Hardware has, and the one in Anacortes is getting bigger and bigger with plantings. I recommend you come to the Ace Garden Center in Anacortes. They have some native plants. What I think you should do though is go to xerces.org and go through that website and find they have a list of native plants providers who also don't use pesticides. There's one in Stanwood I just found today that has native plants. Can someone help me out with the name? I think it had green in the title. Does that ring any bells with any of the listeners? It was a Stanwood nursery. And I don't know how many nurseries there are in Stanwood, but if you're living near that area, I would call the nurseries and ask if they're the native plant provider one. My
And then,
memory is it had green in the title.
and then somebody wanted to know the
Mhm.
name of the master plant sale you mentioned, the Master Gardener
Oh,
plant sale. And what's that?
that is put on by Skagit County Master Gardeners. Go to their website, and it is the weekend before Mother's Day. I believe that's May 13th. I should know because I'm going to be there, but I'm not totally sure. But it's if you go to their website, they'll let you know. And it's one of these jolly events where you think, oh, how big can it be? Well, it's the whole fairgrounds, Skagit, Skagit County Fairgrounds. And uh, first you get there early so you can find a parking spot, and you'll see a lot of people with red flyer wagons that they'll be running toward the entrance so they can get first grab at the tomato plants. And but there'll be vendors from all over selling all kinds of plants, and native plants will be available there too. The other thing you might want to get a hold of is the Skagit County Native Plant Society. They have an online plant sale coming up, and you order online and then you pick up at a predestined site. I don't know where it is yet. But the ordering will start, I believe it's April 20th, and they have just a few numbers of these plants they've propagated, and they're all lovely local natives. It's a very good source for those of you who are quick on the computer and get your order put in. But it's not they have a preview of the list right now. It just came out today. So get yourself hooked up with the Native Plant Society for Skagit County, and find out about that amazing sale. The other thing you can look for next year is the Conservation District. Skagit County Conservation District has an online plant order of native plants also. And I picked up, golly, 30 plants about a month ago. I'm very happy with them. They're all bare root, and I'll be nursing them into adulthood, but they're very cheap. So those are some ideas.
Yeah, and Island County also has the Conservation District plant sale. It just ended though, unfortunately. So you have to
Yeah,
wait till next year. Everybody just picked up their plants like 2 weeks ago. So I'm not sure exactly when that list comes out, but I believe it's February, somewhere in there. So again, Island County Conservation District, you can go to their website and get more information. Okay, next question. Do you have specific species planting recommendations for our endangered insects like the Taylor checker spot?
no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. The one that the Xerces Society is following is the monarch, and they have online, they have specific plantings recommended for them, and they're all milkweed. And you can get the local milkweed uh, uh, from Botanical Interests, which is an online. Well, you can buy their seeds at Ace and SIBOs and stuff too. But Botanical Interest has the type of milkweed that the monarch will respond to. And I wish I knew more about the specific species that the questioner is asking about. Sorry, but I
Okay,
can try to find out. So email me, please,
there you go.
and I will to find out.
Research question for Linda.
Yeah,
Okay, next question. Can Xerces make it easy to figure which plants to plant in specific areas with references to nurseries where the plants can be ordered or bought?
say that again, please.
Can Xerces make it easy to figure which plants to plant in specific areas and where to buy the plants? Like have lists of, I guess it's a recommendation for you to bring back to Xerces.
That's a That's what that is.
Yeah, like recommend that they have plant lists for specific places in the Pacific Northwest and then where to get those plants.
Those plants.
Yeah.
And if you're talking also about specific places in your garden, that's something you want to do a little research, and you want to mark out the areas that are mostly in shade, have sun all day, have part sun, part shade, areas that are very, very wet areas, the areas that are incredibly dry. Know those things about your garden, and that will help you to select specific plants, native or otherwise, to be planted in those areas. And be observant of other people's yards that have things kind of going for them, that notice where in their garden they've planted them, under trees, out in the sun, that sort of thing. I don't know if there's anything else I can say about that, but yes, I will bring that back to Xerxes.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
advice.
That idea.
Thanks, Linda. What are
Yep.
some shade tolerant pollinator flowers?
Well, that salal that one person brought up is one of them. Let's see. I don't have a list in front of me, which is what I need. What have I got in my yard? Oh, I know. The mock orange is a very good, not deep shade, but most shade, like 10% sun or something like that, or more. Mock orange is a wonderful shade one. Hostas, which are not natives, but they have pollinator, uh, their blooms are good for bees. What else is in my shade garden? It would be best if you emailed me. I'm just drawing a big old blank, but there's others. Kinnikinick, that's a
Mm,
good one.
mhm.
And I don't recall that that was on my list either, Kinnikinick.
Right.
And I should, yeah, add that to your usable garden plant, Kinnikinick. Some of the asters can take a fair amount of shade, Douglas aster, but they prefer sun. What else is out there? I'm going to stop right there, and I want an email from that person so I can send them a nice list. I'm a
Okay.
list maker.
Yep. Whoever asked that, make sure you jot down Linda's email. And
Yeah,
it's maybe Heidi can post it in the chat one more time for everybody. Okay. Will bees nest under lavender or heather?
they could do that. Um, I'm going to say lavender more so than heather. This is just an educated guess, not anything I've read, but thinking of lavender, it likes sun, and bees tend to make their nests on the sunny side, on the south side, in these places that have bare dirt or pretty bare dirt, whereas heather takes more shade. I would guess if I were a bee, I would go for the lavender area or the rosemary area.
Thank you. And can you talk a little more about cultivating a mason bee farm?
Not very much. I just got curious, and I ordered some mason bee houses, and I had bought one a long time ago that was, it was like sandwiches of different colored plastics that when put together created a lot of tube shapes. And that was a long time ago. Since then, I've learned that plastic isn't a very good material to use for your mason bee houses, and that you should stick with either cardboard tubes or bamboo or wood that's been drilled with those same holes that are stacked up. There could be like 50 holes in an area this big, about 10 inches by 10 inches. You might have 50 tubes that are 6 inches long, and that's what I ordered, and that's what I got. And I I have my questions about having done that. So we're going to see if I like first of all, if I'm successful getting mason bees after they hatch out, to then find the tubes and all these little mason bees houses that I put all around the garden, and see if they find them and make nests in them. And that's something I don't know yet. But I have been told by the Xerces Society that the best bet to attract any kind of bees, including mason bees, is to plant for them and let them worry about finding housing. And one of the problems with having special places for bees to come together to lay eggs is that it's another way for bees to spread diseases. And for mites there's all sorts of animals, insects that like to use bee larvae for their food, for their own young. So if you have a concentrated place with all sorts of nests right there, well, it's easier for the parasitic wasp or whatever to get their dinner. And if these bees have found their own little places here and there throughout your yard, they're less likely to have that happen to them. So this is an experiment on my part. And I kind of have to think that the Xerces people have a point. That extends into honey beehives too, and how if they have very, I don't know how to say the word, VAROA mites in those nests, in those hives, they too are concentrating in one area and then flying out there and can distribute that disease vector out into the wild bees. So nothing's black and white, even if it's black and yellow, like a bee.
Okay, thank you. Can most flowers be planted now from cedar bulb, and are some more easy to grow than others? I know here's that list again, but
From
that's
what?
is it
From,
time to plant your seed? Basically, this person is asking, can flowers be planted now, from seed? And is it okay to get plants out now? And
okay.
and which ones are more easy to grow than others? That would be a great pollinator.
You can get, I think I'm waiting for 50 degrees for my soil to warm up to 50 degrees. Generally, a lot of the plants, the seeds that you plant for bees are, well, like Cosmos, for example, they're a May planting normally. And we'll see if our soil is finally warmed up enough. I have not planted any seeds yet. I am waiting until my soil warms up. And I'm going to be planting within my vegetable garden to draw wildflowers into that area too, so that I'm hopefully going to have more pollinators in my vegetable garden this year. But it's just too cold. When you can go and get plants at Christensen's that are pollinator, or other places that are pollinator plants, they'll have little bees or butterflies on the little tags. They don't usually get them until it's time for them to be planted. So pay attention to what's available in your nursery right now. And it's a little tricky because if it's a first time that you're planting, you're not sure what's going to work in your garden. They don't all work in everybody's garden. But Cosmos, Calendula, poppies, all the poppies. Uh, what am I trying to say here? What else is out there? I'm drawing a big old blank, but all of those guys are going to be easy to plant once it's warm enough soil. They're going to sprout, they're going to go gangbusters, and they're going to come back next year, not as perennials, but because they're annuals who have shed seed for you. And if they're happy where they are, you won't have to ever plant them again. Clarkia seeds is another one that's easy. What else have I got out there? I love autumn joy for the non-natives. I love autumn joy sedum, and I love any of the other sedums, but that sedum seems to just draw in the pollinators. Lavenders draw them in. Oh, what else? Evergreen Oh dear, I've seen your moment. Another email, you may email me and I'll be better serving you if I can have my lists in front of me. But don't plant yet.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. Is it possible to buy paintbrush plant and have it in the garden? Paintbrush. Oh, you mean the wildflower, probably the wildflower paintbrush that we see up in the
Mountains.
mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember one year I bought the red paintbrush. There's yellows too, but at the native plant sale when they were having the plants and the people, rush at each other at the same time and wipe out all of the tables within about 40 minutes. But I remember getting one and I remember it dying. That was just me. But everything is worth a try because it's your garden, it's got its own ecosystem. If you can find one through the Native Plant Society, that means that they've propagated it here in our county, and it's likely to it's more likely to survive in your garden. Not a very good answer, sorry.
Give it a try. If you love it,
Give it
give
a
it a
try.
try. And if it doesn't work the first time, I say plant it somewhere else. And try it
Exactly.
again because you want to love everything that you put out there. I
Yeah,
think I'm
a
a
lot.
big yes.
Yes.
And then you will find the right spot and it will love you back. Okay, so I struggle with finding pollinator friendly plants that are not invasive. Do you have any recommendations of what plants to stay away from?
Poppies.
Yeah,
In my yard, they're horribly invasive and I am always yanking them out and I always feel bad. If I had a big yard, I'd have a whole meadow of poppies and just let them have that spot in my yard, but they don't just stay where they are. If you have an acre, well, that's another deal. And they are very valuable to pollinators. What other ones not to plant?
gooseneck, loosestrife.
Is that purple?
It's white.
Is it a curved
Yeah,
thing?
comes up like
I
this and
have,
curves. They make great
yeah.
cut flowers, but they spread like crazy.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want that.
I don't know if they're, yeah, and I don't know if they're pollinator friendly either. I just don't
Bees
know.
love them.
Oh, then,
I have them in my
so,
garden, but they're in a good
oh,
spot. What else is super invasive? What do you think about butterfly bush? Because I've heard a lot of
it's,
controversy around
yeah,
that. And
that one don't plant.
yeah,
Absolutely don't plant. Um, they are very invasive. I've seen where they've invaded, going over the pass into Eastern Washington, just, you know, blocks and blocks and blocks, maybe a half a mile of it along a fence row. It just, once they find their place, they just keep going. And I've seen them on the Aberdeen waterfront of all places, right up from the salt water. I mean, or no, is that the river still? But anyway, right up the bank from the body of water that's in Aberdeen, just thick with it and drawing out, kicking out our native plants. I know there's supposed to be butterfly bushes that are non-invasive, but what I don't know is if their flowers are of any use to bees.
mm,
Bees may visit them, but I haven't the experience of planting one and seeing what happened with it. Perhaps some of you folks listening have, but you don't know also the quality of the pollen or the quality of the nectar, um, when it's a hybrid like that and it's sterile. So I have my questions about it. The wild invasive stuff, I think the bees love, but it isn't part of their natural natural foraging. It was, introduced out here.
yeah.
So
I heard it's pretty
I would,
awful to, and you're supposed to
yeah,
give your nursery a hard time if they even carry it. But
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I would kick that one out of the ballpark.
okay. So avoid that one.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. What about the threat of the Houdini fly? I don't know about this. Do you?
No. Houdini fly, not murder bee. I'm sorry, I don't know about Houdini fly.
Mm-mm, I don't
Sorry
either.
about that.
And then there's
I
only,
need to find out.
okay, another research question for you, Linda.
Yeah.
And then what are the best foods crops for bees? I don't know. I think we probably covered that, but that's the last question. Best food crops for our
Food
area.
crops for bees. Well, oh, do you mean food for the bees or food for the people?
Oh, that's not clear with the question. I'm not sure if that person's still around. If you want to get clearer on the question, just put it in the chat.
As far as vegetable gardens feeding the people, the flowering, let's see, which bean is it? The scarlet runner bean flowers are very useful to bees, and pea flowers. There aren't that many things that we have flour in order to eat the fruit of. Most of the vegetable fruits happen underground, a lot of them do. So the flowers aren't, we usually don't leave the vegetables around long enough for them to get their flowers. But in my garden this year, I let my broccoli and no, my kale and my turnips and my arugula, I let it go to flower. And that is something, those kale crops, those sorts of brassica crops are very good flowers for pollinators. But other than that, if you're talking about the flowers that are out there for the bees to use, it would be your best bet is your local native plants. And that's because of the synergy that's been created between flowers and bees over the eons. They sort of grew up with each other and they service each other. So email me though if that wasn't what you meant, and I'll be happy to talk with you or email you back. So
Thanks,
is that
Linda.
the last question?
Well, there's a few more now, and then there was a comment from Bob here, and I'll just read it about the Houdini fly. He says,
Oh boy.
Houdini fly does not attack mason bees directly, but lay its eggs on the pollen meant for the mason bee young. The Houdini fly maggots then emerge and consume the food before the mason bee larva, which causes them to starve. So, a little bit of new information. And then it says that somebody else
Thank you.
shared, Prescott shared, Houdini fly was featured in a Seattle Times article. The larva colonized solitary bees, need to put distance between mason bee flowers. Okay, thanks everybody for sharing that.
Yeah,
Now
thank
we've all
you.
learned something new. Yeah, love our
Yeah.
community.
Yes, me too.
Okay, so let's see, there was couple more here. Are the butterfly cocoons that you can mail order okay to release here? I believe they are painted ladies.
I will find that out. I don't know. I know there is a concern about getting insects in any form from other parts of the country and bringing them here.
Mm,
Uh, and other parts of the country feel the same way. They wouldn't necessarily want things shipped from our state to them either because of the different diseases that they can have
mm,
and might spread to our local insects. But
mm.
uh, that one is, I would need to know more about the sourcing of that butterfly. And I expect there's information on the xerces.org website about that. And I'd sure be happy to look it up, or you can look it up, question asker person. But I would like to know too. Thank you.
Mhm. Good question. Okay, last question. At this point,
Yeah.
what about the murder bees? How do you identify them?
I don't know, except for by looking him up on the website about murder bees. I don't know. I don't have that. I don't have a reason to have that information. Um, I am not afraid, but maybe I should be. I would
Okay.
suggest going to your website. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, thank you, Linda. I think
You're welcome.
that's about it. I
Okay.
appreciate all the questions from the community, and I appreciate you being here and sharing all the information you have about Xerxes
Well,
and
thank
your
you.
own experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. And if any of you are interested to volunteer with Xerces Society, it's a great bunch of people. We have Zooms all the time, and it's throughout our whole country. There's even one gal up in Canada on the east side, but it's a great positive way to help deal with biodiversity and to try to keep our selfishness and wanting to continue to have food on our table because of pollinating insects. It's a great organization, and please contact me if you would like Xerces to get you a speaker. And there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.